These are my reflections on the 2019 ICMAC New England competition. I'm pretty neutral towards competitions in general. For the pros, they're good motivation for training, you can meet other practitioners, and help support the arts. For the cons, competitions can be pretty difficult to organize and run fairly. As a competitor, you're not really sure when you're going to go, so you're constantly warming up and cooling down, and you're not sure if you can have a little snack or when you can use the restroom. On the one hand, competitions don't really matter because I compete for myself and the results are irrelevant. On the other hand, as an instructor, they do matter because you need some form of recognition or validation for your students and their parents. In the end, competitions can be fun and you never know what can come out of it. It's been 4 years since my last competition at the Tiger Claw Elite Championship in San Jose. I've been a judge for the past 3 years to gain new experiences and to continue supporting the arts. Due to some negative experiences at prior competitions and my chronic injuries, I wasn't sure if I'd ever compete again. But I still had some goals to meet, so this summer I thought, why not? My hip injury kept bothering me, so I held back on registering and I let the early registration and Grand Champion registration deadline pass. So I contacted the ICMAC organizers to see if I could still compete. And to my surprise, they said there were other competitors going for Grand Champion and they let me register late. So finally I said to myself, just do it. And I now had 185 more reasons to win and 1 month to push myself. To win Grand Champion for this competition, you need to compete in 4 events: hand forms, long weapon, short weapon, and other weapon. For hand forms, I chose Taizu Tongchen, an advanced long fist sequence that is one of my favorites, and I have goals of doing the balance movements well and testing it pretty soon. For long weapon, I have a lot more experience with staff, but John suggested I go with spear. In our prior experiences, we noticed that judges tend to like mediocre spear over solid staff performances. This was going to be the one that would give me the most trouble because I had so little experience with spear. For short weapon, I chose Sensai Jin because sword is one of my favorite weapons and I also want to test the sequence in the near future. I started learning it at YMA Boston about 10 years ago, but I didn't start training it consistently until a few years ago. I've been training short rods since about 2011, but I'm nowhere near my goal, and it's been on and off due to injuries for the past 4 years. But it's the only weapon that qualifies for this category and is my other favorite weapon. So I trained pretty hard and I rested the night before the competition. My hip started to bother me again, so I took some painkillers and hoped for the best. On the day of, I was pleasantly surprised by how many other competitors there were in my division. Sometimes getting a silver would mean getting last place as well. As my group was called up for our first event of hand forms, I was more nervous than I'd ever been at a competition. My heart was pounding and my breaths were short and I was just really nervous thinking about all the pressure. I had studied with Dr. Young for a number of years, so there was that expectation to do well. I had been in a movie where I played a badass character and I had some personal goals for myself. Once I began Taizu Tongchen, my mind was mentally focused on the sequence, but it was as if my body was still feeling the effects of being nervous. It felt like my legs were 100 pounds and I was stuck to the ground, but without the root, and my stances were not there. My power was getting stuck, my movements were slow and sloppy, and the timing of my mechanics was off. I'm surprised I made it through the balanced movements in the sequence, but otherwise I wanted to erase this performance from my memory. I watched the playback and it was still disappointing, but not as bad as I thought, and it was certainly faster than I thought. I placed first, but part of me wants to compete with Taizu again to do it justice. The long weapon category had 3 or 4 other competitors, and I was the first to go because I was the last to register. Early Chung felt alright for what it was, given the little amount of time that I had to practice it. I was still nervous, so my stances were still high. I didn't always slide all the way to the end of the spear, and sometimes the spear tip wasn't facing the right direction. I didn't score as well as I did with Taizu, and I think I got points deducted because the shaft touched the ground one time when it wasn't supposed to. I ended up placing 3rd. By the time I got to Sensai Jin, I was starting to feel more comfortable. My stances were still high, and I didn't finish all of my slices, but there were some moments of sharpness and times when I felt like my mind was really on my target. I placed first. When we started to do other weapon, I was much more relaxed. I was almost done for the day and there was a good chance of winning the Grand Champion title. Plus, I was about to perform one of my favorite sequences. Short runs felt like it was one of the best I could do given this point in time. I'm told my stances were the lowest they've been in all my times of performing the sequence, although they didn't look that low in the video. I'm rusty compared to before, and my power was getting stuck in my hands, so sometimes my targets were off, but I couldn't have expected much better. Since I performed first, I wasn't sure how much that would hurt me, and I also didn't know how the judges were going to score this category because we all had such different weapons. Even though I took first in 2 categories and third in the other one, the grand champion title wasn't guaranteed. There was that chance that the winner of the long weapon category could win other weapon and then place second for the other 2 remaining categories. After the judges deliberated for a little while, I ended up taking first. So I waited for a few more hours before receiving the grand champion award and to support my other YMA students who were still competing. Overall, I'm not proud of my performances. And when I say this, I can see people's faces saying, "Stop being such a martial artist." But it wasn't a negative experience, and I don't despise my performances, except for maybe Taitsu. I earned a grand champion title, so I achieved one goal. But I've seen some students who are able to bring out their best at a competition or demo, and I haven't done that yet, so that's another goal to work towards. I'm proud of my fellow YMA students for all the training they did in preparation for the event. I'm grateful for the other competitors, the staff and volunteers who are keeping the tradition alive. Thank you to all my teachers, fellow students, and especially to Dr. Young and John. John has been the one who's really watched me practice for the past month, and he's been able to pick out the details that I need to hear in order to improve to the next level. So thank you. So hopefully maybe I'll see you guys at the next tournament.